All right, now, I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I had a girlfriend from North Carolina. I worry about her right now, actually. And she came up to go and see me. She's a Caucasian lady with bright red hair. And she said to me, she said, I'm going for a walk. Now, I live on Harrison and Westminster, and off she went. She didn't come back for about an hour and a half or so, maybe a little bit longer, and I said, where have you been? You know, I mean, I don't really ask people where they've been, but she said, well, I was walking on Cranston Street. And I said, oh, great. She said, well, it wasn't so great. She said, I got stopped by the police. I had no intention of embarrassing you guys, okay? So why'd you get stopped by the police? She said, well, they wanted to go and tell me that I shouldn't really be. First, they thought that maybe I was a lady of the night. She's a parole officer. She pulled out a badge. She's been a parole officer for many years. She works in prisons as well. They said to her, you know, you really shouldn't be on this street. It's dangerous. And I thought to myself, because I live in the neighborhood, how completely separated Cranston Street is from the rest of the community. We don't miscegenate, to use a very, very old word. And I don't expect you to go and have an answer, and I don't want to go and upset folk. But if you got one simple thing that you would think of doing that might make a difference, that would be great to hear.
We're going to start with Mr. Audiello.
Thank you for that question. That particular situation is visibly apparent to anyone who goes over there. You know, my family owned a small business on Cranston Street in our district for decades, and I grew up going there. Now, my answer to your question is we have a very large building right here that is in between this part of the district and the other side of Cranston Street. That building has been closed for 30 years. The Cranston Street Armory is a huge opportunity to reunite this whole district, to reunite both sides of Cranston Street, to bring new economic energy into this area. And it is something that I have made an important part of my plan for being your state senator. This is a state-owned building. 30 years of Band-Aids aren't good enough. And we need someone who's going to be committed to getting that building open and doing it in a way that absolutely solves that problem. Thank you for the question.
Mr. Bell.
Thank you so much for that question. It reminds me of a conversation I had in Curtis Arms, which is one of the poorest public housing complexes in our city, with a woman, and we had a long conversation in Spanish. She was telling me about how 17 years ago, her son had been shot and killed by the police. And just a few days ago, in Pawtucket, there was a young black man who was also shot by the police. And we have not had a good investigation into the killing of Deshawn Cole. And you asked for one simple thing we can do to change how police interact and address some of these police issues. I do believe every time there's an officer-involved shooting, there needs to be an independent investigation into the police department. And I do believe that that starts right now in Pawtucket so that Deshawn and his family can get some justice.
Yes.
Senator DeBoer.
I think, John, the question was about the safety of Cranston Street and whether or not we need to have more police presence. I think that's what the issue is here. Of course we'd like to have more police presence. I don't know how the council members or the mayor addressed those questions earlier, but I would say that I'd like to see more police officers hired, number one. Number two, I have been a strong advocate of foot patrols. I think they're important. I think they work. We have cadets that are waiting to become members of the police department. I think that we need to put the cadets out on the street and provide more security. And on the issue of the Cranston Armory, I can't understand Mr. Audiello's argument, because this organization, the WBNA, we have been fighting so hard to get that place up and running. We've had $7 million already committed to the construction. That's clearly not a Band-Aid, Mr. Audiello, $7 million. And we have a meeting on September 17th to talk about ultimate community use, which I started with Ms. Lang.
And we are at time.
And again, Mr. Audiello on his brochure says that he's an advocate for the Cranston
Mr. Keys.
Armory. He's not.
So I think that those were two parts in terms of the question. One would be in terms of the police. I definitely am in favor of making sure that we strengthen and upheld the racial profiling bill that has, again, that was watered down, that was not passed in the way that it was intended. I think we also need to look into community policing, whatever that may be, but in terms of having the neighbors direct say in terms of how they are to be governed, how they are to be policed, how we are to have that engagement in terms of relationship with the police. In terms of the other part of how it's so separate, no one has said this, but I want to say it, it's segregation. Let's call it for what it is. We have housing segregation. And so when we have that separation and you have investment in one particular neighborhood or one block, whereas the other one is being ignored, that is the particular problem. That is my focus when it comes to home affordability. Whether you're on Broad Street, Cranston Street, Westminster Street, Union Ave, Webster Ave, Hartford Ave, I don't care what particular street, in-house District 9, you need to have the equitable access to the resources for good, adequate housing and to a thriving neighborhood. We all need to be able to thrive here.
Representative Williams.
Thank you. Foremost, we have to be concerned about that police officer who in turn told that woman that she is in some sort of danger. We have more in common, like I said, than differences. And Westminster Street was the dividing line in this community, and Cranston Street is today, okay? It's a travesty to always have to remind your children that it's us and them. It is something that's going on each and every single day around here in this neighborhood. The bottom line here is, if that officer had not approached this woman and said what she said, and what he said to her, she would have been fine. When was the last time you heard about a mugging on Cranston Street? A holdup on Cranston Street? Aside from the newsletter that comes out with regards to some stranger walking in someone's backyard, or because I left my door open, someone came in. We don't have that. We are people just like everybody in this room.